continued fallout as the subway shooter in New York City is still at large now, 24 hours after that incident. They have now named him officially a suspect, and his photo is out being distributed widely. We have a large listenership in New York City and surrounding communities. In the event that he is still in that area, I'd encourage you to go be looking at those photos so you are aware of what this gentleman looks like. And in general, Buck, I am opposed to focusing on shooters and giving them a great deal of attention, but most of the time the mass shooter is not at large like this man still is. And so I spent some time this morning going through a lot of the social media posts of this man. We may have a couple of audio clips to eventually share with you. But Buck, he is a vile, racist human being. I think that there is a very strong likelihood that his shooting attack was motivated by his racism. But because he is a black man, I question whether any of this will ever see the light of day, just like we saw in Waukesha with what happened in that shooting. That awful, devastating attack.
Vehicle attack
inside
at the
of the
parade.
SUV. Yeah. And just for a moment, think about how this story would be being covered if this were a white guy. It's a white supremacist attack. It is leading the news. Every video, every racial insult would be leading the news. I question in any way whether this is going to receive coverage. And I've been making this argument for years, Buck. Think about how much different our media would be if instead of white people are racist being the overriding story that left-wing media wants to cover, imagine if a true picture of America was actually shown, which is there are white, black, Asian, and Hispanic people who are racist against other races. All races have racist, and they represent a minority and should be criticized and reviled by everyone. It would change the dichotomy completely overnight as opposed to just focusing on white racism as if it doesn't exist anywhere else, frankly, in the world. That's the way the United States media covers this, which is why I'm skeptical whether this will ever see the light of day.
Did we ever find out the Waukesha motive? Of course not.
Just vanished.
He actually just pleaded not guilty, I think, pretty recently to 70 federal charges, including intentional homicide. So he's facing life in prison. And the defense, just so everybody understands, the defense is saying, and look, I understand a defense counsel is going to have to come up with something. He pleaded not guilty. Last I saw, if that has changed, we'll update it. But the defense is that he got lost and panicked. Now, the reality is there are a lot of eyewitnesses in Waukesha who saw him, and there's video of him actually zigzagging
trying to hit people.
More people. So the reality is he actually wanted to kill as many people as possible, and we are to believe that there was no ideological motivation for this whatsoever, that hatred of white people at the Waukesha Christmas parade could not have even been a consideration. Remember in the early days, we talked about on the show, I said they're just going to, the media has a playbook now they run with this.
Yes.
We can't know. It's not just that they won't say what the motive is. They will attack people like me, you, and others who will analyze what appears to be the motive in the early stages. And when you're talking motive, you're always speaking about state of mind, psychology of a criminal. So you could argue you never know the real motive. You never know entirely 100%, but it's about a reasonable doubt standard, right? It's about what we can know as people based upon evidence, experience, and reason. And they delay and even attack anyone who tries to talk about real motive. The same exact thing is going to go on right now. You and I will talk about this. This guy's clearly a huge racist and at some level, obviously a lunatic.
Psychotic.
But you have to separate out, is he not responsible for his actions crazy or just crazy evil, but knows what he's doing and is making a choice to be evil. I think this guy falls into the second category. But there'll be no national conversation about our tone of any kind of discussion here. There'll be no greater media focus on how this came to be. They're not going to look at all of his relatives and friends and go into some deep dive about everything he had ever said that indicated that he was racist. No, Clay. They're going to forget. To borrow from the greatest of all time, Rush, they're going to be drive-by media on this. That is what they will do. But they hold off. They hold off everybody, and then they just drive away once the damage is done. They don't care.
And they say, how dare you discuss in any way this guy's motive? It's racist of us to even bring up the racism of this guy. And by the way, this is a string of attacks, by the way, that we can bring together. We mentioned Waukesha. How about the shooting of the mayoral candidate in Louisville? Remember the guy got bail? I mean, this is a clear racist black guy, walks in, tries to assassinate a Jewish mayor in Louisville, and gets bail. Gets right back out on the street. The story, he's the BLM. BLM paid his bail, and the story vanishes, Buck.
Yeah, well,
and
what
also,
is the term?
The Capitol Police attack. Remember the guy who drove the Capitol Police after January 6th? Shows up. He's a black militant in some way, attempts to attack the Capitol. Story disappears.
And now we have to look at this and understand how it fits into the broader discussion going on in this country about crime in general. And they're focusing in on the gun, and they're focusing in on historic inequalities when it comes to crime. We either hold individuals accountable for what they do as individuals, or our entire criminal justice system becomes a joke. It just becomes actually not a mechanism for justice, but a mechanism for political science, which is what the left has basically done. This all fits into a broader storyline of what do we do when we find out that somebody is actually a threat to society, that is a threat to those around them. This guy was on the FBI radar. So he had already come to FBI attention, probably for saying, deeply racist and violent and frightening things about white people.
They interviewed him.
Yes, that's what I mean. They sat down with him. Yeah, that's how he's on FBI radar. And now you could say, well, if he didn't break the law, okay, but I'm also curious to see more about this individual's past and history and what warning signs may have been either swept under the rug or people may have avoided entirely. And ultimately, Clay, there's a lie that's always repeated in the media. You'll see it constantly, that all mass shooters are white. You'll read people in the media that will say this. And you know what the actual truth is? When it comes to mass shootings, it fits almost perfectly as a percentage of the population. When you look at the racial, there are Asian mass shooters, there are black mass shooters, there are white mass shooters. And it is proportional to their representation in the greater U.S. population. And, until we can actually have a serious look at what is going on in cities across the country, how we can stop all this, we've already learned these lessons. I mean, I think one of the great frustrations, Clay, for New Yorkers in particular, we turned all this around. We know how it was done. And then the left came in and said, let's stop doing that. Let's undo it and go against the actual enforcement of law and the holding of individuals accountable, irrespective of historical grievance or the left-wing narrative or whatever it may be. And getting this wrong matters because people die. People are, bludgeoned on the streets. They're robbed. Stores are robbed in these flash mobs. I mean, it should be embarrassing to the city of New York, where I live, and in Los Angeles and San Francisco and every other place that you can think of now, it's a major city, that even in what are considered safe neighborhoods, Clay, basically everything in a CVS is under lock and key now.
Yeah.
Why is that okay?
No, it's a fantastic question, and it's emblematic of the larger decline of safety everywhere. And I just want to play these videos, audio of this guy, to give you a sense. We had to cut and edit some of the words, but you probably won't hear this anywhere else. But this is not a difficult thing to analyze here, Buck. This guy is a racist. He may well be severely mentally ill, but I want you to think about how this would be covered if this were a white guy who would open fire on the subway and if videos like this were out there. Listen to cut 25 as he discusses his racist philosophy.
I had no idea with that African name that she would be married to a white man. One of my subscribers brought that to my attention. Yeah, our black sister, Supreme Court Justice, power to the people, is married to a white man. Let me see this fucking picture. I don't believe this. Oh, God. Wait a minute. This is the right there he is. There he is, right? White man. Black sister. Ketanjate, what the name is. Married to a white man.
So that is him reacting, Buck. There's video of him walking on the streets screaming racial slurs at Asian and white people. That is him. It's a YouTube video that he did. I can't believe that he has any subscribers at all, by the way. That is him when he's putting up a photo of Ketanji Brown Jackson, newest Supreme Court justice, who is married to a white guy, being extremely upset that a black woman is married to a white guy. This would be an immediate, based on all the videos that I have seen, I did a deep dive this morning, this would be immediate hate crime. This would be the lead story on CNN, MSNBC. You'd pick up the New York Times tomorrow, and it would be, how did this guy get radicalized? Fox News is responsible for this
Donald
attack.
Trump.
Like
it would be Donald Trump's
is responsible.
fault. If this were a white guy saying similar hateful things about any other race, Asian, black, you name it, it wouldn't only be the biggest story across all media outlets around the entire. I mean, this was a mass shooting on the New York City subway. And there's
and he's
just this sense
he's still
of like,
at large 24 hours later.
He's still at large, Clay, and there's no panels discussing did we miss something, or maybe, just maybe, all the talk about white supremacy and a white supremacist, white nationalist America, and essentially fomenting hatred toward white people and check your white privilege and all that. Maybe that's not constructive. Maybe that's a bad idea. Maybe it's actually kind of racist to do that. No panels about that. No discussions on CNN or MSNBC. Not a surprise.
I'm also going to play this one. Again, this is bleeped. This is him recording himself walking on the street, screaming racial insults at people in, I believe it's New York City. Listen to this one as well.
Look at me, mother, and they hate your guts too. Slant-eyed piece of shit. All that shit you know in Vietnam, they're not your friend. They ain't your friend. You're something less than human to them. You better get that in your thick skull. Oh, I ain't not black. This color, see? Great idea. But that's the best idea stinking spick could ever have. Let's kill each other. Prove what to you? Motherfucker, you shouldn't even exist. Prove what to you? You shouldn't even be the
all right.
It's
honestly so ugly. I don't, sorry about that.
I think it's important because I'm not sure, Buck, that anybody else will even share these videos or that audio with their audience. This is the guy who opened fire on the New York City subway, and it's going to get, I guarantee you, swept under the rug, just like what happened in Waukesha, just like what happened to the mayor of Louisville getting shot, just like the Capitol Police attack.
Just like Stop AAPI Hate. This guy is clearly an anti-Asian racist.
That's correct.
And that campaign evaporated. Why did the Stop AAPI, Asian American Pacific Islander, is that did I get that right? That the acronym? Anyway,
I think that's right. Yeah.
Asian American Pacific Islander. Why did that campaign go away? Because after the media said, "Oh my gosh, all these white people are so violent toward Asians," it turned out that a majority of the hate crimes committed against Asians in a lot of major American cities were committed by black men, not by white guys. So the story evaporated. Just statistics, folks. Just actual numbers, actual data, and the story went away. I want to come back just into the broader crime issue a little bit here, Clay, as well, with what they're... Because the gun focus from Biden, right? This week we're supposed to worry about
That's
ghost
the
guns.
other pivot. Oh, this guy's not responsible for his actions. How in the world did he have a gun? You know that's what's going to happen.